You just figured out you have no money saved for retirement. Are you alone? Is it too late to make any changes? Most of you watching are you in 20s and 30s and you have plenty of time to correct the situation. If you're in your 40s and 50s, it's a bit more difficult. What's the situation? Are you alone in this situation? And more importantly, what steps can you take to correct this situation? That's what we're talking about today. Let's get started. My name is Yoram from Economia, your destination for financial independence, tips to invest and spend wisely. And those two last points are very interesting and very important for what we're discussing today. Did you know that 1 in 4 boomers had not started thinking about their retirement until they reached the age of 50? In the US, a lot of people are saving for retirement. As you can see on screen, depending on the age, the amount of saving is very different. And when you know that the average American retires around 64 and live for another 20 years after that, it's not that much money. If you look at India, for example, according to a recent survey, only 52% of the people surveyed had any idea of how much money they needed for retirement. The remaining 48% had no idea how much money they needed. And out of those 48%, 69% had basically no plans and no idea how to put the money aside. It's pretty frightening, especially when you know that in India, people retire between 58 and 64, depending whether they are working on the public sector or the private sector. Japan is not so much better. Here you see on screen the average saving by age. It looks like a lot of money when you go in your 50s and 60s. But the Japanese people, on average, retire at 64. And after go on live very long, actually the longest in the developed world. And that's not much money, especially the public pension doesn't cover much either. As you can see, from one country to the other, it more or less looks the same. People are not ready for retirement. How much money do you actually need for retirement? That's going to be depending on where you live and whether or not you own your house in full and completely paid back. But there is a rule of thumb saying that you probably need 67% of your last income to live comfortably in retirement. People on average in the US retire with $50,000 a year. So you take 67% of that and it's around $33,000. If you are in Australia and single with a house fully paid as well, you can have a good retirement between $27,000 and $43,000 a year as a retiree. If you are a couple, it's going to be between $40,000 and $63,000 to live moderately or nicely. What can you do to get ready? Before I start, remember, I'm not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. I'm just a guy on YouTube and this is all for information and entertainment purpose only. Do your own research and make up your own decisions, okay? What you need to do to be prepared is going to be very dependent whether you're in your 20s and 30s, like most of you watching, or if you're in your 40s and 50s because you have less time, right? But there are principles that you can use that are going to be the same for everybody. There are two of those. The first one is paying off your debt. When I say paying off your debt, the most important is any high interest debt, like credit card debt. You don't want to carry a balance over. You need to pay your credit card balance every month. So start by paying those. If you have any student loan, pay your student loan first. If you have a mortgage for your house and you're in your 40s and 50s, you may still have time to pay it off. But if you're already in your 50s and your house is not paid off, you should concentrate on paying it off quickly. If you're in your 20s and 30s, you have plenty of time to pay off your house, so don't worry about that one. To pay all those debts, one good idea is to consolidate them into one line of credit, refinance it and have only one line of credit. You're going to have a chance to actually reduce your interest rate probably, and you pay it off and you keep your debt down and out. This is the first step. The second step is to have a budget. Yes, measure your expense. You have a budget and you know how much you're spending every month. What are your living expenses? And you know how much money you're making and how much money is left at the end of the month. You need to have a balanced budget. And every month you have to have money left. So you need to spend less than you're making. And this extra money that's left is the most important, because this extra money is the money you're going to put aside for investing for your retirement. Now that you know how much money you can put aside and you know how much money you need for retirement, you need to figure out how much money you need to put aside to have this income in retirement, right? So, to do that, it's actually really simple. There are two main principles or two main systems to use. One is called the 25x and the other one is called the 4% rule. Simple. 25x first. Most people, once they retire, would live for another 20 to 25 years. So basically, let's say you want to retire and have $100,000 per year in your retirement. I know it's a lot of money because the average American retires with 60K. And the average Japanese actually retires with 13K, which is very low, but they have a lot of savings, that's why. So just for the sake of it, let's say 100K, right? And you're gonna live 25 years. You need 100K for 25 years. You do 100,000 times 25 gives you $2.5 million. And that's how much money you need on the side with the 25x rule. Simple, right? But that doesn't take into account your taxes, the inflation, and medical expenses. So you have to be careful with this one. So now the 4% rule. This was put together in the 1990s by someone called Bill Bergen. And the idea is that as the stock market, so you have to invest in the stock market for that rule to work. If you invest in the stock market and based on the stock market return in the past 50 years, as you can see on screen, the average return is going to be around 9%, 7 to 9%. So if you were to withdraw 4% from your investment every year, you would withdraw less than what you are making. And then that would help you to withdraw money without taking from your capital, and the money would be there forever. Actually, recently, people have been thinking about the fact that, and including Bill Bergen, that 4% might be too high. So actually 3% might be better, or 3.5%, because the returns on the stock markets are going down. There's more inflation, there's more taxes, but that's the principle. So based on that, you know how much money you want for your retirement, and you can calculate how much money you need to put aside, whether you calculate it based on the 25x or the 4% rule. Make sense? What should you do based on that? If you're in your 20s and 30s, please be a tiny bit patient. I'm going to talk about the folks in their 40s and 50s first, then I'm going to talk about your specific situation. But please listen up, because that's going to give you the foundation and the idea about what to do. Let's continue. If you're an employee, look with your employer if they have any retirement plan. In the US, they're called 401k. In Japan, they're going to call defined contribution plan, and I'm putting the Japanese down below. Basically, what it gives is part of your income, part of your salary goes directly to be invested, and your employer is going to match this amount one-on-one, giving you basically free money and doubling your investment. This is very good because the tax treatment is very favorable, and like as I said, you have one-on-one match, so you're getting free money from your employer. This is really good. Then, if you have more money on the side, or if you can't have that, there are other tax favorable treatment retirement account that you can use on your own and put money in. In the US, you're going to have the IRA and Roth IRA. Those are different depending on your age, how much money you can put depending on your age as well, and it changes every year depending on what the IRS says. If you are in UK, there's the ISA. If you're in Japan, there's the NISA or Nippon ISA. And there's going to be others in other markets. Actually, if there's one in Australia and you're watching from Australia, I couldn't find it. I think it's called Supers, but I'm not sure. So please comment down below and tell me what it is. So you can use those, and you'll have a maximum of money you can put every month. And at the end, when you retire, you take the money out and it's not taxed, or very little. So those are very, very interesting things to do. Now, those are the principles, the basics one, and you're going to have those in all markets. In addition, you have the government schemes, so the pension from your government, right? Of course, it's good to be in those, but we don't know at the end of the day, when you retire, how much money you're going to be eligible for, because the government don't have much money. And if you're in your 20s and 30s, I can't tell you how much money is going to be in 30 years and 40 years for you, but it's good to have it on top of putting your own money on the side. And just before we talk about the folks in their 20s and 30s, if you've learned anything until now in the video, please consider giving it a like. It's going to help us a lot and make this video more widely available and suggested to other people so they can learn as well. Thank you very much. It's very helpful. We really appreciate it. So now you've been very patient. You're in your 20s and 30s. What should you do? You have plenty of time in front of you. And that's the most important. You have time to build, change courses, and progressively put more money on the side. And you have two very important and strong weapons. I was about to say secret weapon that you have. And the first one this time is compounding interest. Compounding interest is not a difficult concept, but just imagine a snowball. If you roll a small snowball up the hill, by the time it arrives down, it's bigger because it picks up more snow. The more snow it picks up, the more snow it picks up. It gets bigger and bigger. That's exactly what compounding interest means. If you invest money over time, this money is going to grow and create more return, and those returns are going to create more return. Let me show you on the screen. If at 25 you start putting $400 a month for retirement, by the time you reach 40 years later, 65, you're going to have $1 million to your name. Pretty impressive, right? But if you start only at 35, 10 years later, you're going to have $473,000, which is almost $600,000 less. That's compounding interest. The earlier you start, the better, and this is very important. Of course, you may not have $400 to put every month at the beginning, but maybe it's only $100. Then the year later, it's $120 and $150 and $200. Over time, you can add up because you're getting more money and you're being paid more as you evolve in your career. To invest this money, you can use the same tactics we discussed right now. 401k, defined contribution with your employer, IRA, Roth IRA, ISA, NISA. You have all of those, and of course the government schemes as well do all of these. Although government schemes, like I said, in 40 years, 30 years, how much money is left, we don't know, but you should go in there. Another thing you have, because you have time and it's really interesting, is you should consider rental properties. Rental properties, the property you buy and you rent, and the rent helps pay for the maintenance of the property and the loan you're taking for that property. Yes, you buy property, you put the money on the side if you have enough, 20 to 30% down payment, and the rest is a mortgage. A mortgage is paid by the tenant in the property. You take a 30-year loan, 25, 30-year loan. If you're in your 20s and 30s, by the time you're retirement age, it's paid back 100%. And it can be just one property, but maybe you are able to have multiple properties by the time you retire. Those properties can give you a nice income. And there's a lot of tax advantages. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but there's this video I'm linking now on the screen. It's probably here or there with all the details of what we are doing in Japan, and it gives you an idea of what you can do in other markets in terms of rental properties to build income. Then you're young. You can also think about alternative investment. Not much, no more than 5%, because those are a bit risky and you might lose some, but 5% is a good idea as a maximum. You can look at gold, you can look at commodities, you can look at cryptocurrencies. I know this year with the cryptocurrencies all the way down, but over time, a couple of banks have made calculation that your return can go up a lot if you add alternative investments. So it's up to you, but no more than 5%. So in case you lose it, you don't lose anything else or everything, and you still have 95% left. What do you actually invest in? Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do. We're going to ask one of the best investors, one of the most famous investors of all time, Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway. And what he says basically is that most retail investors, as individuals, should not do stock picking, but just invest in broad market index fund. And usually, according to research, broad market index fund actually beat the stock pickers most of the time. So what kind you might wonder in terms of index fund or ETFs, broad stock market index fund. Then the other side, you're gonna have some bonds. Again, an index fund of bonds. So you have stocks and bonds. How much bond, how much stock? This depending on your age, as you can see on screen. So this is the principle. And in stock, you can have two stocks, two index fund for stocks. Maybe it's a broad market like I mentioned, and one that's geographically diversified outside of your own market. So if you're in the US, one that's concentrated on the US, one that's outside of the US. Then you have obviously your bond index fund or ETFs. Basically, if you have those and you invest every month, whether it's up, whether it's down, you buy every month to create your nest egg, you should be fine. to give you more details on that, I could go longer, but we've already gone pretty long. So I'm putting here a video, it's going to be on this side or this side, where you can see all the details about investment portfolio, and you create your investment portfolio to go in your 401k or your IRA or Roth IRA or ISA or NISA or whichever it is. That's it. That's all I had for you today. I hope it helps you. I know it's tough when you talk about retirement. If you're 40s and 50s, it's going to be a bit tougher. If you're 20s and 30s, you have plenty of time, but that's all I had for you today. I hope it was very useful. You learned something. If that's the case, please give it a like, consider subscribing as well, and do not hesitate to leave any comments, suggestions or ideas in the comment section down below. Thank you so much, and until next time, goodbye.